Your Majesty at your service. Welcome to Fair Queen Talks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my podcast, Shaping History. What a week it has been. We started off with Martin Luther King's Day, then the inauguration of the President of the United States, and yesterday my first guest appearance on another podcast was finally dropped on various platforms. I'm so happy. On today's episode, I'll be sharing some of my thoughts on people who have and are shaping history, like Dr. Martin Luther King, Kamala Harris, and Amanda Gorman. I think it's important for us to remember history, be aware that history is always being shaped, and the choices we make for our future will be fundamental for our personal and family history and legacy. Starting off with Dr. Martin Luther King. I must confess that I didn't know prior to this year that it was a whole day to celebrate him. So to just give you a brief history, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday in the United States, marking the birthday of Dr. King. It's observed on the third Monday of January each year. His birthday is on January 15th. This day was established to honor the life and legacy of Dr. King and to encourage all Americans to volunteer to improve their communities. I have found it very interesting to see the various quotes and thoughts people have shared about him online. The one that I took most notice of was a tweet from his daughter, Dr. Bernice A. King. She tweeted the following message earlier this week. Please don't act like everyone loved my father. He was assassinated. A 1967 poll reflected that he was one of the most hated men in America. Most hated. Many who quote him now and evoke him to deter justice today would likely hate and may already hate the authentic King. And those were her words. He would have been 92 this year had he not been murdered in an attempt to silence a leading voice in the civil rights movement. His daughter, Dr. Bernice A. King, has rightly shared her opinion because it's so important for people to remember Dr. King's words in its correct context. Our society has a real problem because it appears to reject inspired people who speak the language of love and unity. It's almost as if people are more comfortable with living in a world that doesn't address injustice. If we all truly desire that every person deserves to have access to opportunities to achieve their dreams and live a life without fear, we must address injustice and dismantle it. I'm not very well versed in all that Dr. King has ever said, but I've watched various films and documentaries about his life and legacy. I'm eternally grateful for him because he is a person who accepted his calling in life. He was a loving husband, father, minister, and activist. He not only taught the world about what active love looks like, but he demonstrated it. He was not silent about his views, and although he was portrayed as a passive activist, compared to Malcolm X, for example, he was a full-spectrum thinker who had a radical critique of racism, war, and poverty. His passion, work, and dreams have impacted USA and world politics and subsequently led for the USA to have the first president with European and African ancestry, and now they have the first African American and the first South Asian American woman to serve as the Vice President of the United States. Now, I'm not a Democrat or affiliated with any political party in the USA. I'm speaking as an outsider, a person living in the UK. It's amazing to see that we have got this far into our world history. People of African and Asian descent living in America have been discriminated against for hundreds of years, and for many years they were treated as second-class citizens, and some may still feel like that. The generation of Americans who have lived through the segregation are very much alive. So the America they saw growing up, having people like Obama and Harris in presidency was something to hope for. But now it's our reality. It's significant because of what it represents. Progress still has to be made, but in future years and generations, this will be the norm. Generation Z, Alpha, and everyone after that are growing up in a world where the things people have been living through and fighting for in the 1900s and before are coming into fruition. Although I know and still advocate for social injustice, I recognize and appreciate the progress that has been made. I grew up in a world where I was allowed to dream and believed I could achieve anything as long as I worked hard. My ethnicity and gender can be a challenge, but it doesn't stop me from being able to achieve. Vice President Kamala Harris is not the only woman making history this week. Amanda Gorman's poem during the inauguration was one that stunned the world. If you haven't watched it already, I would recommend for you to watch her reciting this poem. She was quoted to say, "I really wanted to use my words to be a point of unity and collaboration and togetherness." She was so humble and thanking her followers by just, showing her so much love. And she also spoke to the significance of the historic moment of this inauguration this year. She was quoted to say, "I'm the daughter of Black writers. We are descended from freedom fighters who broke through chains and changed the world. They call me." My goodness. Honestly, this week has been the week of quotes upon quotes upon quotes. It's amazing to witness others not only tapping into their greatness throughout history, but also sharing their gifts, talents, and skills for the improvement of their communities and essentially the world. I urge every person to rise up and really be a gift to this world. Leave this world a better place. We can do extraordinary things by living with purpose and intentionally thinking about our calling and working on our legacy. Make your mark in this world, whether it be on the world stage or touching the hearts of those around you. Make and be the difference. I don't know about you, but just thinking about all of this makes me feel so much hope and excitement for the future. When I look at people who have shaped history, I'm led to think about what they did to get to where they are. Each of us are going to be doing great things with our lives, and what we are doing now is part of our history and legacy. I don't know what lies in the future for this podcast, but I know what I'm working on and towards. Yesterday, my collaboration with the Life Picks Relationship podcast was dropped on YouTube and other podcast platforms. If you haven't already checked out my YouTube channel called Fairy Queen Talks, you'll be able to check out the podcast in video form on one of my playlists, or you can look for it on the Life Picks Relationship channel. It's definitely a different experience to be part of a video podcast, but it will be an opportunity for you to actually see me and my face and be familiar with me besides my pictures on Instagram. On the podcast yesterday, I shared my thoughts on the challenges I faced in my relationship with my husband and why he is truly my bestie. I won't go into it too much today because February is coming, and in honor of Valentine's, I'll be speaking on the topic of love in February. So be sure to stay tuned each week because I personally am looking forward to next month for several reasons. It's my hope that you will act in accordance with your dreams and plan for your future. Remember that you are making history each day and that there are people before you who have shaped the world that you live in now. Appreciate the present and hold on to hope for a better world where justice and freedom is a reality for everyone. At the end of each episode, I address the Queendom. History has been shaped by courageous individuals who lived up to their calling and were led by love. You may not be appreciated for your work and endeavors whilst you're alive, but that's okay. Make and be the difference. Let's make the world a better place by standing for justice and love. Thank you so much for listening to Therapy Talks. See you next time.